I've been working up in northern BC for the past couple of years, working on the LNG projects up there. And it's a real onslaught in the north. There's now 20 proposed export facilities for the province. Most of them are in northern BC. I'm just going to tell you about one project that's really a front runner in the province right now. As we've all heard, the economics of LNG are really failing in the world. There's a couple companies that are still pushing to build LNG projects in BC. One of them is a company called Petronas. You might have heard about them in the news because 2 months ago, there was a safety audit revealed that in the Indian Ocean near Malaysia, they're operating offshore oil rigs that are in catastrophic states of disrepair, that when the auditors assessed them, they found that they're at risk of explosion. There were 6-month safety audits that were overdue by 20 years. This company is proposing to build a pipeline that is the purple line in this map here. It would start in the fracking grounds in northeastern BC in Treaty 8 territory, cut across through. I lived near Matty Lee camp. What Matty Lee is a territory of one of the house groups of the Gitxsan Nation. When they learned the details of this project, they decided they were going to blockade the pipeline route. They've been blockading for over a year and holding that down against the intrusion of this fossil fuel company into their unceded territories. Lelu Island is on the coast near Prince Rupert. It's where they want to build the export terminal there. It's a little different than the Malahat one. It's designed to be built on land. I'll skip that one. This is what it's proposed to look like. Lelu Island is the island where the plant is going to be. This is an island that for 10,000 years has been known to the Tsimshian people as next to one of the most important rearing grounds for wild salmon in the entire northern coast. Flora Bank is this area that they conveniently kind of make small in this image because they want to make it small because it's the most incredible spot. This is what it looks like from the other angle. It's a sandbar that actually is relic sand from the last ice age. It's held in place by a balance of river currents, waves, and tidal inflow, and it doesn't move because of that really delicate balance. And what grows on top of it is eelgrass. It's this very specific grass that grows only in the sand that's found on Flora Bank, and this eelgrass is the most vital habitat for juvenile salmon. So in the spring, you have all these salmon run down the Skeena River, and they hang out in this eelgrass for weeks at a time while they're adjusting from fresh to salt water. The Skeena River supports the second biggest salmon run in Canada. So it brings in more than $110 million every year just from sport fishing and commercial fishing. This island was studied in the 1970s when the government was proposing to build an export terminal there to ship grain. And the government scientists from DFO said, you can't build this. It's way too sensitive. We can't touch Flora Bank with a 10-foot pole. That was government scientists. In the onslaught of LNG in the last 5 years, almost every location around Prince Rupert and Kitimat has been bought up by LNG companies to build an LNG terminal. One of those is now Lelu Island. So SFU scientists and others have looked into the LNG proposal for Lelu Island, and they've said this is basically a disaster waiting to happen for the salmon run up north. This is what they propose to build. It would be a jetty out over Flora Bank. The main concerns are that salmon don't like swimming under bridges. They plan to put a bridge in the migration route of 500 million salmon every year. Also, when you put a jetty out like that, it'll block the incoming waves, which would mean that the river currents would be strong enough to push the Flora Bank sand out to sea, and the whole thing would just be submerged. Now for a bit of inspiration. Petronas, in their sneaky ways to divide and conquer First Nations, also this is a coastal region that's used by 5 different Tsimshian nations. In their consultation or supposed consultation, they basically bullied these communities for years on this process, and then suddenly, to the surprise of everyone, showed up last May and put $1 billion on the table to one of these 5 First Nations. And they said, you have 1 week to decide whether you're going to say yes or no to our project. This was Lax Kalams. There are 5,000 members of that nation. That's over $300,000 per person that they offered. They gave them 1 week to decide, and they told them that they had community votes in which they were going to vote by raising their hands, as if they were school children. The Lax Kw'alaams Nation had their own scientists that had been working for a couple years finding the science on this. They came into the room for the community vote, and they had the scientists from the company come, and the science they've done is absolutely atrocious. It's unbelievable when you look into their documents. They cover it up with propaganda. A lot of people believe they can do this safely. If you hear this in the news, this is in the news quite constantly now, whether this can be done safely for science or for salmon. It's a total lie. It's a total travesty when they get into the environmental assessment process. In this meeting, Petronas gave their science, Lax Kw'alaams gave their own science, and I was talking with the hereditary chief from one of the tribes of the Lax Kw'alaams, and he said, the second that they finished giving their science, one of the chiefs stood up and he said, "How could you be so insulting to come to our nation and try to tell us that you know more about our fish than we do?" And after that, every person stood up in the room, and 100% of people in that room voted against a $1 billion offer from Petronas. Shortly after that, basically the company ignored it, the BC government ignored it. Within 2 weeks, the company had given a conditional final investment decision in the project, completely ignoring the fact that it was voted against, and the BC government had passed tax legislation for the project, also ignoring them. This pissed people off. They then decided to occupy Lelu Island and blockade the project. These are some of the hereditary chiefs that have been occupying Lelu Island for the past 3 months. They've built a permanent camp on the island now with a cabin. They've been turning away drillers that are essentially out there from Petronas looking for how they can build their trestle, and they can't actually find solid rock underneath that sand because it's such a unique sand feature, and they're out there drilling constantly. I tell this story both to give you some perspective of what's going on up north, and also just to offer a story of inspiration. This community has been, at the forefront, and it's not just the small Lax Kw'alaams community. It's really the whole north and the whole Skeena watershed uniting around them. And there's a history in the Skeena watershed of First Nations and non-First Nations really working together. And it's an inspiration for me. I only lived there for a few years. I went to university here. To be up there and see the solidarity that can come, and really the beautiful relationships that can be built through hardship. And I've heard Adam talk about that you end up knowing your neighbors in a new way. And that's kind of the Achilles heel of all of these industrial projects from the government and industry, is that they're building a populace that's actually connected and informed without knowing it. So I don't think LNG is going to happen in this province, because we're going to stop it, and global economics are going to back us up, and we're going to be stronger coming out of it. Thanks.